for Women continues to show its support for the Forbes Africa Leading Women Summit. Ladies and gentlemen, please pay attention to the screens for a video by Amina J. Mohammed.
Dear colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen, last week the Secretary General made a global appeal for a push on gender equality. This is the unfinished business of our time and a necessary step for a better world for all. To achieve this, he called for a redistribution of power, because ultimately that is what equality boils down to, equal power. The power to shape the world, to be included, and to fulfill the potential each one of us has. This year marks 25 years since world leaders adopted the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, the most progressive universal agreement for advancing women's rights. Since then, we've seen some laudable achievements for women and girls, not least from this continent, where there is incredible leadership. At 61%, Rwanda has the highest percentage of women members of parliament in the world, with Namibia, Senegal, and South Africa close behind. In 2018, Ethiopia elected its first female president and has appointed a gender-equal cabinet. I was pleased to visit Ethiopia just a few months ago as part of a 5-country trip to the Horn of Africa focused on women, peace and security, and development. The leadership of women in this region, in government, civil society, the courts, the military, and as entrepreneurs is incredible. As all of you can testify, the women of Africa continue to rise. And they are pushing back at the obstacles and impediments in their way. Women in Africa are running for public office, despite threats or financial constraints. They are risking their lives to broker peace in communities and secure a space at the peace table. They are standing up for their rights in the workplace and challenging social and cultural norms so that sisters and daughters will not have to endure the same harmful practices as they have. When women work together, united by a shared vision, we are invincible. We see this through the African Women Leaders Network, which is working to empower women on the continent across the political, economic, and humanitarian fields. And through Generation Equality, UN Women's intergenerational campaign to drive conversations and actions that will fulfill the promises of the Beijing Declaration once and for all. The women and girls of Africa must play a central role in these alliances and in Africa's present and future. We are looking to you to continue to forge the path.
There we go. Thank you so much, ladies, for cooperating with me and my tendencies so far today. But I think a credible line that was shared with us that when women are united, we are invincible. And that's exactly some of the elements we want to build upon today. Again, introduction to my panelists who will be guiding us in the conversation, how we actually incorporate women in the agenda where digitalization and artificial intelligence will be the mainstay of the reality that we will be living in the future. Please turn your attentions to the AV screens as the introduction for my panelists will roll, and my panelists themselves will make their way up to the stage quite promptly. So it's obvious what just happened right there, right? Is it obvious what just happened right there? While we're still awaiting the arrival of our panelists, we do understand that there are some pressure points in terms of time for the minister to make her way up onto stage. I do want to remind them wherever they are, again regarding logistics, whether up at behind the stage or at the technical booth, if they can speedily make their way up to the panel to engage in our conversation. And there they are, ladies. They didn't leave me alone. They came back, and they're going to keep me company. A round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen, to our panelists for joining us here. First, let's get the awkwardness out of the way, right? You all thought that they had left me and abandoned me here on stage to actually run this panel alone. Isn't that what you thought? Let's be honest, let's be real. But at least they actually made their way up onto stage to share some of their insight with us. Again, a reminder that we did manage to catch up on time following lunch, but we will add some brevity to this conversation and hit it straight hit the nail on the head in terms of understanding how it is that companies can incorporate women in the agenda as we move into the digital age, as well as in terms of technology and AI. Now, my panelists are with me on stage, and Minister, I'd like to start off with you very briefly. I do understand you're under pressure for time. Let's talk about, I heard the MEC for Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs in KZN referred to you as one of the babes of 4IR. And that's because you are one of the individuals who is playing a key role in establishing the policy, which hopefully will be adopted by business and civil society in order to drive the change towards the fourth industrial revolution. Where do women feature within that particular policy paper?
I think this is the most relevant question. And having sat here this morning, I was looking at captains of industry speaking about how it is important for us to make sure that women are not left behind. But I'm a C-suite that will be looking at the ordinary rural women in the provinces where we come from. Because as government, our interest should also be on how do we make sure that women in the rural areas are not left behind. Just an example of what we experienced a few days ago, where a family was going to Eastern Cape to go and visit. And the first thing when kids arrive there, mommy, is their Wi-Fi. And that's where the grandmother is. And kids will never, going forward, connect with their grandmothers precisely because, one, as government, we have not provided infrastructure in the form of fiber, but two, households are not connected. Now, if you look at statistics, let's look at what the world is saying and where is Africa. Africa is young. South Africa also has the youngest generation, majority of whom are girls or women, but also we are the one that is least connected. So when we talk 4IR, they are enablers. And as government, we have to look to work towards making sure that there's infrastructure, there's connectivity, but also there's reskilling of women. Because as we were talking about some of these things, including informal sector where predominantly women are participating in that sector, are they able to be equipped to use technology to their advantage to advance their capacity and make more?
Yes.
So those are the challenges and the narrative that we now have to look into.
I'm glad that you touched on that because it's not only about accessibility, but also being able to make use of this resource that is provided to you in the form of data, hardware infrastructure in terms of accessibility as well. Irene, I'd like to bring you into the conversation. You have transformed throughout your career and have played a very pivotal role in providing access to cellular technology as well as data for many South Africans and Africans across the continent. In terms of skills, accessibility is one particular element that the Minister touched on, but how are we actually looking to advance on the skills that women need to start developing and investing in to make sure that they can be competitive in the digital age?
Well, thank you for that, but I maybe just start off. I'm not sure if everybody can hear. I have difficulty in hearing you. I don't know if you got
Yeah,
just in
I have
here.
a kind of
So I'm not sure if it's a mic issue, but as we came on board, just on a lighter note, it's clear that the mics that are being used have been invented by men because, and I would like somebody to innovate that because, you know, these mics, you need a belt or a pants to put this on somewhere. That's why we are holding this, and we don't have, you know, when you have a dress, like we are all wearing a dress, you know, so it means it's, when something is invented by a man, you will have to have a mic because the pants are here. So if you have a dress with nothing to hook something on, where do you put the mic? So hopefully we'll put a challenge onto the young woman to go and invent something, making use of the technology that's available today. And I mean the technology that is available, we're talking artificial intelligence. We are no more, we're talking the fourth industrial revolution, where we're basically saying that machines, the tasks that are being performed by intelligent human beings, are now being performed by computer programs and machines. And the opportunity for women to be innovative and invent things across our continent is huge. There's such opportunities for us, and I think we need to take advantage of that. One of the things that is resulting in the new technology is the fact that we need to do a lot of research to ensure that the future and what is happening, because as we're living today, everything that we do, you've got an iPhone, do you use Siri? That is artificial intelligence. Some people are driving cars, I mean, not in the rural areas because they haven't even seen this, but in the modern world, people are driving cars. You can get into a Mercedes and it can park itself. You can drive a Tesla car, which we don't have in I don't know, anywhere in Africa. We haven't introduced a Tesla car.
Sure.
But a Tesla car it's self-driving. All of that is artificial intelligence. It's the intelligence, whether it's planning, learning, problem solving, knowledge sharing. It's all from a human intelligence going into a machine doing all of this stuff. And that's narrow artificial intelligence. What we are saying, what needs to happen is the intelligence in terms of the future. When is that going to happen? I think the opportunity for us in Africa, we can leapfrog all of that. We've done it before. When you look at the basics of GSM, prepaid was introduced in Africa. It wasn't introduced anywhere else in the world. It was introduced in Africa. And I think the opportunity with governments now through the African Union, rolling out broadband infrastructure, which will facilitate the fourth industrial revolution, facilitate artificial intelligence. I think the opportunity is there for women to take the lead in developing and innovating services and application that can go on top of that.
Indeed. A pertinent point that you mentioned there, and of course speaking to access to data as now being formed as a primary human right for human beings across the world and of course on the continent. And that brings me to you, Elizabeth, of course understanding how this huge conglomerate in the form of HP is making sure that access is available, skills are deployed, and of course participation is taking place. Are there initiatives or opportunities that HP is looking into that build up on some of the feedback that your colleagues have shared?
Indeed, and Sawubona. Good afternoon, everyone. Allow me to tell you a story that will respond to your question. Yesterday, I had one of the most refreshing an afternoon of recruitment. We have a couple of jobs opened, and I love meeting with these generation Y and Z because, you know, they challenge us a lot and in the way we do things, in the way we think, and so on. So I had beautiful and talented people. You know, when some people think that Africa has no talent, they should come here and see what's happening in the continent. And I have two ladies that blowed me away. The first one, we have the interview, and she said, I'm an entrepreneur. I said, oh, good. So why are you applying for HP? And she said, because I want to do more, because I want to have my own tech company, and I want to learn from inside how it works. And I said, then I guess you have some diploma in business or an MBA, something like that. She said, no. Actually, I didn't go to school that far, but I said, then how did you become an entrepreneur? And what kind of company do you have? She said, I have an aesthetic company, beauty, nails, and so on. I said, oh, very good jump from beauty to tech, but how did you train yourself? She said, I followed the tutos on YouTube.
Wow.
I learned on YouTube, and nowadays I have 50 regular customers. Okay. Interesting. Second lady. So we have the interview, very curious, bright, smart, and at the end of the interview, I asked her, how have you heard about this job? And she said, on WhatsApp. WhatsApp? We didn't post this job on WhatsApp. And she said, no, you did not. But my friend heard about it from a friend of her, and she posted it on her status. And I'm going to hire her. And she learned about this job via WhatsApp. 15 years ago, this thing wouldn't have happened. And whether we like it or not, technology nowadays is everywhere in our lives. It has totally changed the way we interact, the way we socialize, the way we study, the way we work. I mean, you can be a fantastic student living in the rural zone and you will not have access to the same qualitative study than your cousin living in town. Isn't it unfair?
Yes.
Technology is giving us this chance to have this ubiquity. We are here, but still, with the phone we have in our pocket, we can be in London or Harare or Togo or wherever you want. With just one laptop and a good network connection and electricity, no load shedding, I mean, you can simply work with the US, with Abidjan or Paris. These things are absolutely amazing. These are the things that technology is offering. And you mentioned it. The fourth AR is already in our life. I'm hearing a lot of fear. And I mean, again, you know, every change, every innovation brings fear. But if we do not consider the opportunities these things are offering, then, I mean, we say that 50% of the global population is female, right?
Yes.
And as you said, if we leave this technological innovation into the hands of men, if we do not have the courage to be bold enough and contribute to the future of our lives, but also to the future of our children and to the future of this planet, then what can we do?
Yes.
If we do not contribute to a better life, what can we do?
Yeah.
And HP, in this sense, what we are doing is pretty simple. First, we raise our leaders, our female leaders. Every year we have a Catalyst program where we have 200 young talent, and Zama is with us here because she's one of these future talent. And we try to give them the right exposure to the roles. You know, some people may think that technology is made for geeks or for engineers. And think about your own stereotypes. If I ask you to close your eyes and to think about the vice president and general manager of HP Africa, would you think about me? Seriously? No.
I'm hearing no.
No, you won't. We are our first enemy. We are the one missing these opportunities just because we do not dare enough.
Yes.
And we are helping our young leaders to be bold and to choose their lives and go beyond what people tell them that they can do or can't do. We are the only one who can choose what we can do or don't do with our lives.
Yes. Elizabeth, I'd like to jump in there because in terms of understanding access, we understand that it's a multi-pronged approach, right? Sure. It's government assisting with the policy to enable the investor to come in with the infrastructure, the additional software, hardware, data analytics companies, and even machine learning capabilities to also come into play. But we're probably speaking from a position of power and opportunity, given that we are in an urban area that has access to many of these facilities. What is it that we can do as women who are in corporate entities, who are entrepreneurs, but still ensuring that we remain competitive in our businesses using artificial intelligence, but connecting to the rural woman who happens to be in a rural community, who happens to be younger than us in terms of generation or significantly older than us, to make sure that they also participate within this realm of technology and digitalization. And I'm assuming there again that there's themes that we can pull through from various sectors of the community, and bearing in mind that this is about the continental approach in terms of the fourth industrial revolution. Minister, let's come to you and then we'll come to you.
Maybe let's look at, and I think I like this conversation. Let's look at the practical example that is confronting us, coronavirus.
Yes.
In somewhere in one of the provinces in China, the whole community is quarantined. Kids can't go to school, everybody can go anywhere. But you know what is very powerful there? Learners every day are doing their homeworks. Parents are monitoring them. There's still schooling taking place. Imagine if we had the same opportunity as one rural area right in Vembe, where even in this catastrophe or in this challenge, there's still connectivity, kids can still learn, everything can still happen. But where's the problem in our situation? The reality is that kids in the rural areas are taken care of by grandmothers, that's one. They can't read and write. Technology then it becomes something that we ask for more. But also, those many women who are there, technology-wise, they are not yet there. So the live streaming and other things. So Africa has an opportunity, and I agree with her. We can leapfrog. But we also need to partner, and I like this collaboration and this engagement because it's us who are here who can bring back that activism. I think it's you who spoke about the activism. Women actively pioneering some of these things and making sure that things happen, because otherwise the world that we're living in is the world of young people who know technology and they will want to be supported by all of us.
Deputy Minister, I'm going to put you on the spot very briefly and ask if government might look at providing incentives to make it easier for the investors and the executives in the room to actually facilitate this leapfrogging going forward. Yes, no? Are we engaging in those conversations?
Yes, we're doing that. Yes, that conversation is there, including what our minister is now going to do. I mean, the president is hard on us to say 5G or spectrum now or 4G
and we want it and
all
we want
those
it at
things.
A cheaper price.
Exactly.
Yes.
Even the interventions we made on the cost to communicate. I mean,
Yes.
those are some of the interventions we are making. But here for the public and not for business at least.
Exactly.
You know, the public must at least pay less to communicate.
So if I can just come in on this. I mean, if we look at the continent, we have people from, I'm sure, north, west, east, sub-Saharan Africa. We have an opportunity as women to get more involved in the sector. Very important when it comes to services. If we look at the continent now, there's approximately, if we talk mobile, and I'm just talking a basic handset that's in the hands of people. At least 500 million people on our continent have a handset in their hands. They might not have a laptop or a computer, but they have a handset. Many of those handsets are not top smartphones, but at least you have at least 150 million of those handsets that are smartphones, which means you can engage and interact with it quite intelligently. Now that means that across our continent, in the major countries, and I always say Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, probably Egypt, are key in terms of those regions, key from a growth point of view. The infrastructure exists. Basic infrastructure when we talk about for voice, and then just on 3G exists in those countries. What we're lacking is leapfrogging to a broadband infrastructure.
Yes.
Now, the president, and before I get to the point of the AU, one fact that I've learned quite recently is that the coverage, that at least 80 to 90% of a population are covered because they're mainly urban and peri-urban, and that it is the 10% of our population that are in rural, and they spread very far. And this is where government has to be the one to fund infrastructure in those particular areas. It's very important, and I know in South Africa, the government is playing a big role through the Department of Communications in ensuring that there are requirements by big operators to ensure that they roll out in those particular areas and providing services. But for the woman, in terms of moving forward, the president of the AU, which happens now to be our president of our country, President Ramaphosa, is very clear that over the next 5 years, the agenda of women will be a top priority. And what we need to ensure is that the funding that is available for women investment, whether it's from technology, agriculture, food security, any of those, that we access that fund. And what I'm going to challenge Forbes Africa is to say, what can you do to ensure that the debate and the voice of women are heard, to ensure that the funds that are available, and there's $1 billion available, $1 billion for women to invest. Let us say, at least per year, how much of that funding can be accessed by a woman per country? And we need to do that, so that this doesn't become a talk shop. We actually ensure it happens. And I think we can ensure that that happens.
We certainly will ensure that it happens. And very briefly, given the time constraints that we're facing, I do want us to, again, give us an actionable outcome that all of us can actually ensure that we implement in our lives. And Elizabeth, I'll give this to you to wrap up very briefly in terms of the one skill that we need to empower ourselves with to make sure that we are relevant in the digital age. And I say this being cognizant that our earlier conversation with Dr. Naledi Pandor spoke about her 5-year-old grandchild learning to code. So at 35, at 65, at 85, is that a skill that women across the continent need to be empowering themselves with?
I'm a strong believer that education and private business owners will save Africa. That's the reason why I have signed in September last year with UN Women an agreement to empower women capabilities via technology. And we do that not only in the large cities, but in the rural zones as well. And we allow women to become entrepreneurs.
Yes.
We give them this opportunity. Let's not forget that most of the, computer was invented by a woman. I don't know, for some reason, suddenly we disappeared from the picture, but we have the capabilities and the talent to do that. So education, education, education. We have every year at HP 10 to 15 learners who are here to learn every single job we do in the company, so they can become their own business owners, or they can work for other large corporations. So all our investment within HP goes in the direction of education or women empowerment through technology.
Perfect.
Just one comment, and I think it must be a takeaway for all of us. And I saw Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma coming in. One of the things that we should all take note of, and I think Forbes should lead in this regard. If you look at the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, the preamble speaks 2-3 lines about women. Article 3E speaks just 2-3 lines about women. And it means all of us here must sponsor something that focuses on women in as far as the AFCFTA is concerned. Because for as long as we are not proactive and making sure that those things happen and proposals come across to the heads of states,
yes,
we will remain micro. I'm saying micro because Dr. Nkosazana every day says women cannot always become micro this, micro that, go to micro lenders and so on. So we also want to be macro.
Yes.
And we can only do that if we also become proactive ourselves and be in the forefront of some of these things.
Again, reinforcing the earlier messaging we heard this morning in terms of activism, that the wheels will only change and actually begin to move unless we are the ones that start implementing this change that takes place. Self-investment and development of technology skills, despite the fact that it might interface with your company differently, but acknowledging that technology is the fundamental future that will influence further business transactions going forward. Thank you very much to our panelists for participating. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them a round of applause as they make their way off stage.
I'm going to help you.
Perfect. You want 4 minutes, but thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for our participants for sharing some of their insight and feedback with us, ladies and gentlemen.